Well, hello, traders and investors. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets, and we're doing it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we're asking ourselves what happened today, and what does it tell us about the coming ones. I do the show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube, and it's under the channel L.A. Little. If you want to subscribe, reach up in the right-hand corner, hit the subscribe button. Anytime I push content, you'll get a notification. As far as what's happening in these markets, folks, it is the same story. We keep trying to push higher. Now today you actually had huge divergence inside the market. You had the NASDAQ, the NDX struggling to get higher. You had the Russell ending up basically flat. Dow Jones also basically flat, up slightly, and the S&P 500 up 1/3%. So you can see the divergence taking place here. What's driving this? Well, today it was basic materials, right? Basic materials here, the energy sector driving it today. All popped up pretty big after not dropping yesterday. Those were the two main ones. Financials were still doing well. Financials were helping, of course, the Russell, although it barely eked out a gain. What was hurting here? Big cap tech. Same thing has been hurting. Intel lays off 11% of its workforce, or announces that this evening after the bell. Big move in oil, the 2.25%. That was after a continuation move from yesterday, the reversal. And you also saw gold popping today. You had big moves overseas, the DAX, the Nikkei, all of those moved as well. And so you've got this confluence of taking place, right, of happenings taking place that continues to drive this market. It just doesn't stop. So if you look at that S&P, you can see that continued push up. So you've had, I wrote members this morning. You've had basically three, if you look back here, you've had three occurrences where this market is pulled back for 2 days or more. Outside of that, this whole advance, right, 2 months plus now counting, that whole advance has had 2 days back-to-back drops, and the percentage-wise has been very minimal. What does it do today, right? Continues up, folks, and until you see some sort of a reversal across all these indexes that actually gets some follow-through, it doesn't matter. It just keeps going higher, no matter what you think or why you think it. If we look at the S&P from a larger perspective now, going to the weekly chart, swing point high, it's over it now on the weekly, right? And unless we have a major dive here by the end of the week, it looks like it's going to hold it and you're going to get a breakout there. That only leaves two other swing point highs. It's going after this one now, and there's another one just up above it. Folks, you've got a major rally, doesn't want to stop, or at least not yet. And unless something pops up in earnings or in the feds or somewhere else, right, this market just keeps climbing, and there's no sign of a turn at this point. That's on the S&P. Now, if we look elsewhere, it looks a little different, all right? If I pull up the NASDAQ, for example, you get overpriced back underneath, but a little bit more volume. That says you can go back and test it again tomorrow. If I look at the NDX, right, consolidating up here, almost does an engulfing, a bearish engulfing, but by the end of the day, they pull out a little bit of a gain, not a gain, but they keep it from falling a full price point. 45.31 was the previous bar. They only closed it at 37, so it's not an engulfing. Again, volume a little bit higher. This is just a tight consolidation like you saw before, right, in front of a lot of the big tech earnings. Russell, as we were talking about, got a spike up, but it ends it up with a doji. Does close higher. Yesterday's highs was 11.39, 11.40 today. Can go higher. So when I look at the indexes, I don't see anything telling me yet that there's anything other than to expect this market to continue to try to drive higher. So that's where we end it tonight in terms of our indexes. If I look overseas, we've kind of got the same story, and I want to go to the DAX first, and then I want to go to the currencies next. Here's the DAX, breaks out right over a swing point high, volume expands. If we pull it back, look at it on a weekly, going after the breakdown bar is high now. So you've got the potential now for Europe to make the rally. Here's the swing point high. We were talking about Switzerland. It was picking up steam. Gets over a swing point high now. If we look at it on the weekly, it's coming into the bearish retest region on the SMI, and that low there is 81.55. You're trading at 81.52. You got as high as 58 today. This week will be a good test of that and see if that holds it. And of course, I'm talking about the bearish retest regenerate, which is where you look at the prior swing point high and low. You take the low and you say, okay, can it get back into it or not, or will that reverse the price? If we switch over to the Nikkei, you see the same sort of thing happening there. A nice big spike up last night. But here's the same thing when we're talking about the retest regen. So if I draw in the same picture that we just did on the Swiss market, right, you've got this retest regen. Now, there's a difference between them, and that is that on the Swiss market, right, you always want to look at how long it takes for something to come back. And in this case, the distance between here and here, or actually between this bar and that, is less than 6 bars. On the Swiss market is way more than 6 bars, and that says that more than likely what you're going to see is the Swiss market's going to have problems towards the bottom of that area, right? So as the Swiss market comes back into the swing point low, whereas the Japanese market could actually get back up deeper into it this time around. Of course, that's going to depend on what happens in the currency market. So let's flip over there and take a look at those. And we'll pop over and look at what happened today, because we had breakouts in other areas as a result of what was going on in currencies. And the currencies really are driving things, whether you realize it or not. Here's the euro. Euro spiking higher. What does that do? That presses the dollar lower. Again, euro isn't to those highs, hasn't broken over those highs cleanly and moved up to the next one. But at this point, it is trying to push higher once more, and that, of course, is putting pressure on the dollar. If we look at the yen, as we were just looking at Japan, the Japanese yen was actually down just slightly. That helped the Nikkei on the opposite side, right, to push higher. And finally, if we go down and look at the dollar was weaker on the day, down here testing those lows again. If we bring it back, there's still this high volume low down here, wide price spread bar sitting down here at the lows, right? And that certainly looks like where the target is eventually on this trade. And we got pretty close. It looks to me like we're still going to try to hit it. Of course, what is that doing? That's putting juice into other things. For example, the oil market. If we look at the oil market, right, big spike up today. Some follow through from that reversal yesterday. That's using the USO. It was even more pronounced when you looked at the WTI itself. Bonds couldn't go anywhere, but the other thing that was moving, of course, was gold, right? When the dollar gets weak, gold tries to push up. Gold pushing up, and it's still in this big range up here, still trading in that big range. That range is about like that for the most part, using this big spike bar, right, as the magnet bar. It's held it for 2 months. And if you go back and look at my talk back when this spike took place, I had said that usually this type of a move, and I'm going to pull it back so that you can see it on a weekly, but typically this kind of a move, when you see this pattern, right, just realize that you get a steep move and then you go vertical, right? And that vertical move, when it's accompanied by volume, almost always ends up being some sort of a range, and it's a one-way range. And that range could be as deep as there. So far it's been this far, on the weekly. And eventually this thing should consolidate long enough to where it eventually breaks out again. And that's what's been happening, right? It's doing the consolidation. People get worried as it pulls back, but every time it pulls back, it's an opportunity to buy. It's a range as you go sideways, but you don't want to be trying to short one-way ranges. You want to be buying into the direction of the trend, and that trend direction is up, and that's what you should be looking at. Okay, so that's it for tonight. It gives you some feel for what's going on. There's some big moves afoot, mostly with the currencies. You got the ECB coming out this Thursday. Are they going to be able to do something to push that euro down, or is that euro going to break out? To me, that's the biggest question this week, because if that euro breaks out, it's when it's trading inside the range. That's a totally different story than when it starts to break out. Now, the bulk of this range, if you look at it, has been in the center of this area here. Let me just map it out, right? The bulk of the trades have been in this area. That's where everything's happened. If we start to break out up into here and start testing this swing point high and potentially breaking it, you're going to see some heads turn, and you're going to see some money start moving as a result of it. And folks, if that does happen, and if the dollar does get pressed, because the dollar would be the recipient on the opposite side. So in other words, if we pull the dollar up and look at it, that low may not hold, right? And this range all of a sudden starts to break down. I'll bring over the monthly so you can see it. If that starts to break down and you come back into these swing point highs, again, you're going to see some major moves as a result of that if this actually does break back down out of this range. Keep that on your watch list, because that is going to be a biggie if it takes place. As far as tomorrow, looks like more grind to me. Until we get reversals that stick and some follow through, you just got to stay with the trend. Folks, have a great one. Thanks for joining me. Tell a friend, tell two. I'm LA, is and was your daily NeoTA wrap. Have a great night. I'll see you next time. Good night.